Good afternoon and welcome to the June meeting of the Murfreesboro Historic Zoning Commission. We do have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and proceed with the meeting itself. You should have received meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to read them, and are there any necessary edits or changes? If not, the chair would welcome a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve as submitted.
Great, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. If no further discussion, then all those in favor of accepting the minutes as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Thank you very much. Joe, could you please describe our first item here?
Sure. We have one item on the agenda today. It is for the property located at 320 East College Street. The property is located on the south side of East College Street, which is just one lot from the intersection at North Academy Street. The house was constructed circa 1855 in the arts and crafts style architecture with a patterned shingling and a gabled roof. This house is considered to be a contributing structure in the East Main Historic District of the National Register of Historic Places. The property was recently purchased by the applicants in November of 2017, and the home is currently in a gutted condition, and the homeowners would like to do several alterations to the exterior of the home. I've listed the various different alterations. I'll go through them through the following. The first is they would like to add a potaculture to the east side of the home. They would also like to add a screened-in back porch with a workshop addition to the rear in the west side of the home. They would also like to add flower boxes to some of the windows on the house. Replace the stucco with a natural cut stone veneer. The stucco's on the border of the house. They would also like to restore the original windows on the home, which are currently wood windows, and they would like to add screens to those windows. They would like to complete the remaining cedar brackets. They would also like to paint the exterior of the home, refinish the front porch and add stairs leading to the driveway, replace the concrete walkway leading to the front porch, add landscaping around the entire property, and finally they would like to add a fence around the rear of the property that is approximately 3 feet tall. I've added some pictures of the surrounding properties to the agenda. The picture that's on the screen in front of you is the house directly to the east of the property. And here we have the church that's on the west of the property. And then I added some pictures of the current gutted condition of the exterior of the home. And you could actually see, due to the parking lot of the church, you could actually see the side and the rear of the property. So those would have to be considered as well. So the fence is part of that. The neighbors, so after the applicants have submitted this, I asked them to talk about a little bit about the landscaping, and I asked them to be here today as well. They are in the audience, so they can answer any questions that you may have.
Great. If the applicants would like to come forward, if you please come forward and state your name and we know your address, but state your name.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I needed to disclose that I'm personally acquainted with the Poleskis. They are already downtown residents, so we're acquainted from neighborhood barbecues and gatherings, but I don't feel that this would create any conflict for me at all.
Okay, thank you very much. If y'all would like to come to the podium.
Hello, I'm Molly Taylor Poleski, and this is my husband, Steve.
Great.
What other information would you like? Actually, I printed out a few packets of information about us and our plans, a little more details. And our architect, Christopher Dillahy, is also here with us today and has the plans that he's made. So should I share those?
If you'd like to approach and distribute those, that's great. You did raise your hand when the narrative was being described by Joe, and Joe's working out of a book that he inherited. What is the date of your house?
Well, we're working from the 1997 Historic Site Report from the Center for Historic Preservation. It doesn't have an exact date, but it approximates 1912 for the construction of that.
For construction.
At the very earliest, it could have been the late 1900s, but that would have been rare.
You can see it's not present on, I believe, the 1910 Sanborn map, and then is present on the 1918.
It is present, yeah.
So.
Yeah, the 1855 was like, no way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the craftsman movement was formed.
If it was buried in the middle of the house and just got a new cover over the whole thing.
Oh, that's fine. We could just put them.
Actually, I think they would because they weren't able to print it out. Oh, really? I got a set, so I'm fine. And they should be on our screen too, but I'm sure they would like to maybe make some notes.
Okay, we share.
Thanks.
We'll take a look, sure. Thank you.
Due to the number of changes, it's my personal preference to sort of break this up into parts because it'll be, for Brenda, it will be just crazy to try to write one motion.
Yeah.
Or for us to even come up with one. So to help Brenda out and us to stay focused, I'd like to break it up. If you'd like to just generally describe the renovation, then we'll go into pieces and parts.
Well, I think broadly speaking, we think this is a really, architectural gem of Murfreesboro. It's one of the, maybe the only or one of the few true representations of the craftsman movement in Murfreesboro. And, my wife Molly is a history professor at MTSU. We're both believe a lot about in historic preservation, and it's kind of been both of our shared dreams to own and restore a historic home. We spent a while looking at various homes in downtown Murfreesboro, and kind of our consistent frustration with them was renovations, primarily interior, that were not what we would have chosen. And so when this house came on the market, and it was at a state where the interior was gutted, and there was a lot of room to kind of rebuild it, in the way that we wanted to do it, it was a really exciting opportunity for us. So the principal goal here is to restore this house to being a flagship home in Murfreesboro, and being as consistent as possible with the craftsman movement as we can. At the same time, we want to make additions and modifications to make it very livable and comfortable for our young family. We have 2 young sons and plan to be in Murfreesboro for a long time. And so, that's really our primary intent is to restore it and to make it a place that we'll be excited to live in.
Great. If you could come forward too and state your name and address, that would help. If you're all 3 going to speak, that'll just help for the record's sake.
Christopher Dillahay, 1044 Barfield Church Road here in Murfreesboro.
Great. Thank you.
When they hired me, before they hired me, actually, we had a long conversation and talked about what their intent was for the home. And one of the things that made me want to take on the project was their dedication to the neighborhood and to the just the history of the home. I was very encouraged that Molly does what she does at MTSU as a history professor, and they both were very passionate about wanting to maintain the integrity of the home and the neighborhood. So that was one of my prime, directives, was to try to make that happen. And it was something that I personally would sort of insist on as well, just because of it being such a prestigious, what I consider a prestigious home in Murfreesboro.
Thank you. I think it might be beneficial if we started with the site drawing to understand the committee to understand the drawings. And since the first, I'll go ahead and add too, you have on the list that to paint the exterior of the house and to add landscaping. We don't review those. Right. So we won't be getting into that. Now, Joe, you brought up the landscaping, but we don't review that.
Correct.
Yeah. It appears then on the site plan that you are adding a new driveway because it's gravel now. And that's in the lower left-hand corner of the drawing. It has a herringbone pattern.
Currently, there's a concrete pad coming off of the.
Okay.
Coming from, I guess, as it crosses the sidewalk there. So it's really just an extension of that.
Okay.
And then also to sort of direct into the porte-cochere and stay clear of the pole.
Where the porte-cochere is, there's 4 lines that connect up to that herringbone section. What are those 4 lines?
Let me look. I gave all my plans away.
I knew when I grew up there were sidewalks. I mean, there were just driveways just for your tires, and then what was in between was grass.
Yes.
Is that what that is?
Those are what those 4 lines are, yes. We were looking to kind of have a little pad. We went around and around many times during the design process of exactly what we wanted to have a home for the car, which is always a difficult thing, designing for a residence. And we finally settled that even in the craftsman they had a home for their carriage or for their horse or for even cars. And so we determined that we looked at where that could be. We looked at having something in the rear yard as a separate sort of building that we led to, and we looked at kind of having those sort of tire paths, if you will, that lead, concrete tire paths that lead to that garage. And so when we finally sort of integrated it back to the house, that sort of remained. So that's still the little tire paths.
Okay. And then you have a new portico share with an attached or included storage room that obviously probably has a concrete slab there.
Yes, sir.
And a storage room for outdoor storage. Beyond that, there is a circular sidewalk or feature
Right,
walkway.
it's more of a landscape type feature. It's really there to kind of help sort of organize getting into the house from the portico share.
It'd be great for flow, yeah. And then you have a fence around the perimeter on 3 sides at the back.
Yes, sir.
Describe that because it's not described anywhere in here. What is that fence made of? All we know is it's 3 feet tall.
I'm sorry. We, working with Molly's father, which we're very fortunate to have him as a resource, he is a landscape architect, and also he sits on his historical board, and he's very, very helpful. And one of the things that we were trying to accomplish with having a fence is, even though they mentioned they have 2 small boys and hope to have a dog and maybe a couple of cats, you know, so part of that was to keep that fenced in, so to have a fence of some sort. But we talked fairly extensively about what that fence should be, and her father had made a recommendation of using basically a stained cedar post with and I think we have that. Do you have that sketch somewhere? That he'd sent? That basically had using sort of I'm trying to say, a powder-coated grid to span between these panels, between these posts. So you'd have cedar at the bottom, cedar at the top, cedar at the post, and then sort of a black powder-coated grid that uses also black brackets that holds all that together. Part of that was to, since we're adding a portico share and since we're such a narrow side lots, was to be able to remove those panels if we need to get back in and out of the backyard for any reason. They're easier to replace if there's bits and parts. You don't have to replace the whole fence, things that need to be replaced over time or repaired over time.
Being that you're only providing us a verbal description, I don't know how we can review really the fence itself.
I can give you a drawing or a sketch of it, either way. That was something that,
Let's continue around the site, and then we can come back to that, because we may have to table that one. There is a new fence wall and fountain. Is the fence wall then masonry?
That section would be masonry.
Masonry, yes, okay. And then you're connecting the new fence up to the existing fence of the church. There's the addition and the rear that includes a screen porch and a shop storage section.
Right.
Then on the front, you're replacing the front sidewalk to the front steps, which you're also replacing, and you're adding cheek walls with posts, if you will, at the bottom of the cheek walls. Sure. And it appears, though it's not noted on the drawing, that you are connecting up the bases of the front porch columns on the front and the right side, the low wall.
That was another long discussion that we went round and round on too, of whether or not to just have an open porch, to have some sort of railing. We're within the 29 inches of needing a rail. We're below that, so we don't necessarily have to have a rail per code. But we felt that since we were looking to replace the stucco that's currently on the foundation with some sort of Tennessee limestone, they've found a few samples that they like, that we could actually extend that wall slightly just to give a sense of surround and to connect those posts and feel like they have some meaning to them.
But to be clear, it's shown on the elevations but not the plan, so I wasn't sure if you're wanting to do one or not do it.
Yes, we are looking to do it.
You're looking to do it, okay.
Just to clarify there, it's been really difficult to understand what the porch would have looked like at original construction. We have photos of what it looked like in the 90s, and we have pretty clear evidence that that was that work was done at some point, between the 50s and 90s. So we drew a lot of inspiration for the porch design from other comparable houses built in this style in the 1910s.
Okay, but when you say in the 1950s, what are you describing? The bases of the front porch columns, or a rail that was there has been missing? I mean, what are you describing?
I think the rail more than the bases of the columns,
Okay.
more than the pedestals.
Okay.
Well, I think the pedestals themselves, you could see that they were a brick foundation. It's currently wrapped in stucco. It's unclear if that stucco is original to the house or not.
Okay. Before we get into the pieces and parts, I just wanted y'all to have a tour of the site before we get into pieces. Do you all have any questions of them before we jump into the specifics?
I think I'm not hearing very well, but I still am confused about the front porch, what you plan to do.
Okay, currently the front porch, the surface of the porch right now is it's in disrepair. It needs to be replaced. It's cracked on.
So it's a concrete slab.
It's concrete slab, yep. And so that would need to be replaced. Additionally, on the front porch, if you look at the elevations, you can sort of see how we're putting stone on the foundation part.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're extending that foundation, we're extending that stone up another 16 inches just to provide a little low wall that's even almost like a seating wall. So it's not like a big, high, tall gate fence type thing that we're looking to do, not kind of a barrier of any kind. It's more of a visual containment of the porch, with the exception of where you enter the porch, either from the side or from the front.
So you're going to jack the roof up of the porch and then take the slab out, take the piers out, and then I don't know what supports the slab, but you're going to re-veneer. You're requesting to re-veneer the front. Is it real stone?
Well, we're not sure if we're not certain whether or not we need to actually tear out the existing concrete or resurface the new concrete. That's still kind of yet to be determined.
Okay.
But visually right now it's fairly unsightly. So we're looking, during the construction process, we'll kind of visit that as we need to.
Did that answer your question, Linda?
Yes, so.
I've got one question. The fence, the inside of the cedar post and frame, what material is that going to be?
On the fence you're talking about?
Yes.
The posts themselves would be cedar,
Right.
stained cedar. The upper and the lower rails would also be cedar.
Okay.
The panels in between, maybe that's what the question is you're asking. Right. The gridded panel, we're looking to use like a powder-coated aluminum.
Okay.
So it'd be black, so it would match sort of the brackets that you see holding all this together.
And I pulled a sketch for that. I could just walk over.
Sure.
That'd be great. That'd be
It
great.
was something that her father had.
I'm afraid we'd have to table it.
Okay.
As part of this submission, I'd like to get a copy of that sent to Joe.
Sure.
Oh, I got you now. Okay. So the in-between of the rails is open air, so to speak.
Yeah, it's fairly open air. Yeah. It's not very visually obstructive.
What other questions might the board have before we get into specifics? If not, I'll just jump into it. I'm just going to go down the list. The first one is the portico share on the east side of the home. What questions does the board have? First off, what is the series of angled lines within the portico share footprint where the concrete slab is? Does it mean anything?
Are you talking about on the site plan?
Site plan?
It's just to determine, show you what's new versus what's existing.
Okay. And I'll note for everybody that there is a herringbone pattern where the car is actually sitting to match what's out there in the slab at the street.
If I can add also, part of the intent with the covered, the portico share was that it's almost more of an outdoor porch that you can park in. So it was meant to be more than just a place to park your car, but if you don't park in there, you can can host little block parties, or little, gatherings, that kind of thing. So it's
Where do you
meant
put the food for the picnic?
exactly. That's right. That's exactly right.
What is the roof on the
The
house?
roofing material?
Yeah, on the house and on the Port Cochere.
The roofing material is right now, it's the current roof. I think who was doing the renovation originally had already re-roofed part of the house, and so we still have the samples of what they had started with. But it's sort of a diamond patterned shingle that's on it now.
Asphalt shingle.
Asphalt shingle.
Have you found resources to replace that? They're getting less.
It's made by GAF. Yeah, it's
Is it?
it's a
Okay,
fairly
GAF?
common- Yeah,
And so you'll match that?
yeah, we'll just match that.
And I have a question. I was curious about the new porte cochere that you're going to put on, and I was looking at some of the photos that you've given of craftsman homes, and it doesn't appear to me that they have storage. They seem to be more open air.
They are.
I was wondering about if that follows through with, the craftsman style.
With you're right. They're not showing. They don't have a storage component in their porte cochere. Not to say that there couldn't be one. I think that part of what we're trying to accommodate here is, I guess, a little sense of privacy there, but also just a place to store bicycles and whatnot. I know Molly rides her bike to school most days when it's not terribly rainy, but it's just to have a place to access that is easily accessible and integrated with the porte cochere. And then just from a structural component, it helps with shear. It helps it from moving around. There's other ways to do it, obviously, but it also helps it from wobbling around in the wind.
I guess for me, I've been in houses that haven't owned one that had a porte cochere with storage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you'll find that door getting out for the driver every day, that storage closet is very close to your door.
It is.
Your side of your car, and getting out, it's going to be very difficult and frustrating perhaps, especially small children, getting them out and all that. Have you considered putting that storage closet at the end of the shop storage instead?
At the end of like on the front of the building, as opposed to the.
No, the shop storage on the back, that's to the side of the church.
Yeah, that I think because of its approximation to the driveway and the sidewalk, I think a lot of this is about a place to put a bike. And
Well, you show bike storage in the dashed line against the house with
Right.
also the trash storage, so
I think that's what the main issue is. Obviously, it's a small site. We're trying to stay within the setback lines that we have currently. So that was obviously a bit of a challenge. We knew it was going to be a small, minimal, if at best, place to park. But then again, we were also looking at a very minimal, small, very, very small garage if we look to do that. So we kind of opted between the two and went with the porte cochere.
well, you have a 10-foot forward to the property line from the edge of the shop storage, and you have a 5-foot setback, so that would leave you 5 foot forward, and your outdoor storage is 4 foot deep. So it would fit on that end.
Well, we're trying to maintain a 15-foot total because of the zoning, the side setbacks. You have to maintain a 15-foot total side yard setback. So that's why that shop is set back where it is.
Well,
We
you
have
have
obviously-
10 foot forward, so how can you get 15? Has it already been approved as a variance?
No.
The combination of both
Combination.
sides have to equal
Oh.
15. So one side 10,
Gotcha.
the other side 5.
Is there a specific objection to the storage that maybe I could address?
Well, sadly, I was born in the 60s, and the carports most all of them had those attached storage closets, and they just were not attractive from the street.
So you kind of
I'm
have that.
afraid for you all, plus getting in and out of the car, that it's going to be soon an annoyance of just getting out of the car. But I think from an aesthetic point of view, it's just not something typical you see on a style house like this. And I think it ought to be located somewhere else personally. Now, I'm one person.
Right.
And I can't make a motion, and I only get to vote.
Well, we want to be, that's another reason too. From the very beginning, we've all wanted to be very sensitive to the neighborhood and those kinds of comments.
And I meant to earlier say I applaud you all for doing this, for trying to blend it in, all your changes and additions. I think you've done a great job.
And I guess my question was, when I was looking at the other examples that we have, and in just other craftsman homes that I've seen, it's the open air idea, I think, is so nice, and the air movement and I guess that's what made me wonder about that. I do have some misgivings about closing that side in.
It's the material on the exterior of the storage area.
In the storage area, we're looking to use a hardy material, like a board and batten. One thing that we're trying to do for most of the new elements is, again, there was some discussion about how much are we trying to make the new additions. Are we trying to fool people to think that the new part is actually part of the old part? And I don't necessarily want to do that, but I also don't want to. I don't want to produce a starkly contrasting material. So I tried to find a sort of a material and a look that would integrate with what we have now, but would clearly show that, if you knew better, you could look at it and go, okay, that's the new part. That's the new part.
I think you've done a good job, because the Secretary of Interior standards for preservation, you would not match it. You shouldn't match it. It should be obvious to the casual visitor or person seeing that, oh, that's an addition. You do want it to blend. You don't want it to stick out like if you were to cover it with license tags or something bizarre. But you blended it, I think, well, and it works with it. But yet it's definitely different.
Well, that's a bit of a philosophical kind of debate that's still raging, I guess, as to how much do you want to make it look like the old and try to fool people to think that it is old, and how much do you want to clearly be new, but still respect the old. So we kind of fell toward that one.
I don't particularly have a problem with the storage at that location, but functionally, I have to agree that's compromised somewhat. I was just trying to figure out.
Yeah, I'd say that as we were thinking, I mean, believe me, we talked about all this, so the feedback is really helpful. I think our primary goal, so we're up to 5 bikes today with a 2- and 4-year-old, so we envision a future state with 8 bikes. But we're also trying to really preserve as much of the backyard as possible. Obviously, if the goal is to get storage, the other obvious choice would be to build another accessory building in the back. Unfortunately, if you do that, then you effectively eliminate your ability to use the backyard for playing catch or anything other than just being a garden. So this was the compromise we came up with, but we're always we're always looking for the right idea.
Well, it gives you 10 feet of storage space for the vehicle, and sometimes the new parking lots will have a 9 by 18 space, only 9 feet wide. It's rare to even find a 10-foot wide parking space at some commercial project somewhere. So it is, unless you've got a Yukon.
It's very minimal. There's no doubt about it. But at the same time, you know who you're parking in next to.
Yeah, and I mean, today we're driving a Prius, but we're thinking about a future state where we need a bigger vehicle.
You'll have a Suburban eventually.
8 bikes for sure.
You park it off to the side over here. You put the Prius in.
That'll be the tow-behind car. What other questions does the commission have?
My question is about the stucco. You said you don't know what the original material was. Is there are there no old photographs or records that would show what the foundation, the porch material was?
I personally think that stucco was what was there, whether it's this stucco or not, but I do think that was there. Looking at the places where it's in disrepair, and I've kind of looked at some layering and see what might have been there before and removed or replaced, but I think that, honestly, in my opinion, I think it probably what was there.
Was
But
stucco.
we haven't really found any.
And why would you not go back with stucco?
I think really it's more of an aesthetic choice more than anything.
But you're trying to restore a historic building, and if stucco was the original material, would you not choose stucco?
Well, the goal isn't necessarily to restore it, but to reuse it, but to be respectful of its history and its materials. I think stone in this case, it's certainly appropriate to the style. It's appropriate to we're looking to use a Tennessee limestone. At the same time, we're also looking to use like a hand-tooled stone as opposed to a hand-cut stone. So it's apparently also very crafted, if you will. So.
I'm not sure what our guidelines say. David, are you looking at the guidelines by chance? Or?
No. Left in a hurry and didn't bring them today.
I mean, to me, I don't have an issue if you knew the original was brick or whatever. I know this town, at some point, a stucco salesman came through this town like a whirlwind and covered up everything, including wood houses. They have a heavy coating of heavy textured stucco. Somebody made a killing and put their kids through college.
There was a whole time period that happened, actually. I think.
But to me, if you knew it was brick, I'd have no problem putting it back to its original. But it's been stuccoed for so long, I don't have a problem with
If you,
stucco.
Well, no, because you're replacing the stucco with stone, correct?
yeah, so I think,
So that's the question.
yes, like we said, there's a lot of different opinions on what it would have originally been. We haven't been able to find anything definitive. When you look into the craftsman style, there is evidence of some stucco usage in early craftsman houses. However, far more common is stone and wood. So I think that's at least how I originally started thinking about stone, and a personal aversion. Sounds like it's shared to some extent on the board to stucco. And then as I've been just digging up, living Rutherford County and digging up the local materials, that's really what the craftsmen were trying to do is use the most local material available. And obviously, there's an abundance of Tennessee limestone around us.
Right?
So that was our thinking.
Let me also add, too, that in looking at the places where it is kind of in disrepair, you can see that the brick that is there is not meant to be a face brick. It's meant to be clad in something. It's meant to just be there as a structural component and not as a finished material. So I think that and part of what I'm responding to is a few deteriorated brick too. So, but at the same time, I think that we have talked quite a bit about what seems appropriate there. And of course, stucco was what's there now. I'm not sure how appropriate it was, how much it was used in the beginning. I think it probably was, but maybe not. But I also I know that whatever we do, something's going to have to go back there over what's there now. So that's why we said, you know what, let's go ahead and integrate some stone, which I think could really anchor the base of the house to the ground as well.
We as a commission are required to issue a certificate of appropriateness, and it's all based on the Secretary of Interior standards for preservation. So that's where we're coming from, is that if that rough brick was not meant to be seen, and so it was covered with stucco at some point or originally, the natural thing would probably be to go back with stucco. So that's part of our dilemma in reviewing this as to what is the appropriate material. If we could perhaps go back to the porte cochere, I know it has the masonry piers to help support it. We can come back to the finish of that when we look at the entire house. I'd like to sort of stay on task with this. So are there any further questions on the porte cochere? If not, the chair would welcome a motion.
Well, I'll make a motion. We approve it as submitted.
We have a second. Is there any further discussion?
The question would be the finish. As submitted would include the finish, so I would exclude the finish from the motion.
Is that acceptable, you, David, until we get to that item?
That is
Okay.
stucco versus stone, because we haven't determined yet whether we would approve the stucco. So you wouldn't want to do
I mean,
stone.
approve the stone.
Right.
Yeah, well, I personally don't have a problem with the stone, so if you want to change the motion, you can change the motion.
Well, I think that's what,
That's what I'm asking,
his
is it
question was.
since you made the motion, we have a second, I'm thinking if we just discuss the stucco versus the stone, because of the front porch and other aspects of it, we can just talk about the structure of the portico
fine.
share. Okay. Okay, since we have any further discussion, I'll call for the vote. Then all those in favor of David's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? I say no. What for the closet? Storage closet. But it passes. Item number 2, add screened-in back porch with workshop addition to the rear and west side of the home. What questions does the commission have related to the addition?
It appears to be a screened-in porch, so I'm assuming just beams and screened-in area back there. There's no hardy board.
So it's got the little storage area.
The storage area off the porch does appear to have one area of hardy board.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm sorry, I thought we were just talking about the screen porch. The
I
screen
bet-
porch itself is just, right, it's the foundation and
Yeah.
some beams to sort of match what's going on in the front of the building as well.
And really just a small portion of the storage is visible from the street.
Yes.
Small sliver.
And based on the trees in the photograph we saw earlier, it's going to be heavily screened, I suspect.
And the shingle we see in this elevation, is that the original house over to the right of the screen porch from the rear elevation?
Yes, sir, that's the original, that's part of the original building. I
Cedar.
think if you look at the bottom, it says new addition, like where what part's new and what part's not on the bottom of the elevation at the ground line.
Okay.
There's a little arrow that kind of shows what's new and what isn't.
Any further questions or comments about the addition in total, both the screened-in porch and the storage addition? If not, the chair would welcome a motion.
Oh, I do have
I'm
one
sorry,
question.
please.
I'm sorry. What is the exterior finish of the storage unit? Storage addition?
The storage addition, with the exterior finish, we're looking to do like a painted hardy material, board and batten, cement fiberboard material.
Is it a stucco texture for between the vertical members?
I think we'd probably use the smooth texture as opposed to the stucco texture between the two.
The idea is that the storage unit and the two storage units would be the same finish on
Okay.
on either side of the house.
Okay.
Any further questions?
I'd make a motion to approve the request except for the stone addition, which we're going to bring up later.
Here in just a little bit, yeah. Actually, in two items. Any further?
Second.
Have a second? Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It passes. Thank you. Let's talk now about the flower boxes. It appears that they show up on at least one, I'm going to generalize it, one on every elevation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a detail in the package that some of you all have seen.
And let me add to this too. We are in the process. We kind of looked at each other and said, you know what? Let's try to get in front of the historical commission as soon as we can. We were still working on design stuff. Even the day we were submitting it, we were trying to get our eggs in the same basket there.
So I think that the fun part about the flower boxes is that so we do know that these were original to the house. At least we know that the one on the front in the left side it was original to the house. In the historic report done by Van West student.
The Center for Historic Preservation.
This was their only recommendation for renovation going forward. So they endorsed restoring the flower boxes.
Yeah, you can see where the flower boxes were on the original, if you look at the, I don't know if there's images of the original house, but, or the house that stands now, there's still evidence of the flower box being there. So when when you're there, you can see there's actual shingles sort of missing where the flower box sat under those two windows on the second floor there. And that's sort of where the whole flower box image started. But then we realized it would be nice, because we can see it, you're going to be able to see it from all sides, respectively, that it would be nice to have a flower box on a few other places other than just the front of the building. And then we also, I tried to come up with the concept, this is sort of a Swiss chalet craftsman style, and kind of looking into some of the flower boxes that you would see there. That's where sort of the design that I've proposed on the plans sort of comes from, but also try to make it in such a way that it's sort of modular, so whether or not you have two windows or one window or whatever, so it still matches.
Any further questions or discussion regarding this?
I think this is a great architectural element, especially if it's an original element. I would note that's the north side of the house, so I'd be curious what will get
What's
enough
gonna grow
sun
there.
to grow in that box, but that's, I guess, beside the point.
And I guess my question would be, so just a few, we're not,
It's basically one per side. So the front one is the largest one, and that's the one that was originally there.
yes.
Remember that correctly, inside the court. And then we thought it was such a lovely thing that shouldn't be added to the sunnier sides of the house, especially one outside the kitchen window for herbs.
Okay. I was just concerned, there's so many windows.
Oh,
We don't wanna-
yeah, not every window gets a flower box.
Right. Yeah,
It would be
on the
watering all
elevations,
day long.
I've noted on the elevations where we intend to put window boxes. Now, you're right, I think
There's
it works
one
out
on
to be
every
one on each elevation.
If no further discussion, the chair would welcome a motion.
I'd move for approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, then all those in favor of the motion to add the flower boxes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, now we get to the stone veneer versus the stucco versus the brick versus the whatever else. Further discussion from the commission.
What's the white band material that shows up in the picture of the existing home? Above the
The
stucco?
existing little skirt board that's there now is, I forget the gentleman that was rehabbing it before you bought it. They had already kind of, had already started to kind of alter the exterior, replace shingles and brackets and whatnot. So part of what they had done, and you can see it when you're up there close, is the existing board there is made out of wood, painted wood. The new boards that they're adding, where they've added some new boards to it, is a painted cement fiberboard material.
Okay.
And on those, they've added a little white aluminum, say flashing, that goes underneath the siding, so that any water that gets below the siding drips, has a little drip edge on the front of it. So that's what's there now, but it's not there throughout. The flashing part.
Yeah, so when, you've gone in and looked at what was behind the stucco already?
Well, there's a few places where you can sort of, where the stucco is been sort of messed up and needs to be replaced or repaired. You can sort of see.
If you look at the photograph of the front piers, or about on either side of the stairs, you can see
that too,
the
yeah.
original. You see it right there and right there, those two places.
Yeah, there were two little cheek walls there originally that at some point in time has been removed. I'm not sure when that happened. And where the stucco was
So there
where
was-
those cheek walls were, you
There
can
was
see
a
what's
cheek
behind
wall
it.
there, so in some respects, you're putting them back.
Yeah,
We don't
exactly.
know it's the same plan, but
Right.
there were cheek walls.
Same intent, yes,
But they only went to the slab top,
right,
not the extra 16 that you're all requesting.
correct.
But those are brick.
That's brick there now currently, sir.
What additional questions does the commission have?
Well, I think the question is, was it stucco originally? Right? Isn't that what we're talking about? And Deborah, you're saying no?
We don't know that it was or was not.
It's just, you had said that they're rough
Yeah.
brick, and it looked like that they were not meant to be
Something needs
visible.
to go there, yes.
Okay.
Whether we replace it with stucco or replace it with stone, or back up, whether we replace it with stone or not, the stucco that's there, much of it probably needs to be scraped and repaired and replaced. Part of my personal concern with that is I don't want to start messing around with grout lines and things in the conventional brick that's there. If we cover it, if we use a veneer, we could probably leave what's there without really messing with what's the structure behind it. That was another thing that I was happy when they both said that, we'd like to maybe look at doing something else with the foundation, and I know Steve was inclined towards stone in particular. So with that, I thought, I looked around and kind of poked around and found that there's still a foundation there that we could support a stone veneer that could go in front of what's there now, and so I was a little concerned about what we could do to either repair it or replace it, but looking at the condition of not that it's bad condition, but whenever, like you don't want to pressure wash an old building, that kind of thing, because you're going to start removing and irrigating out the joint lines. So part of those things part of that is what made our decision in trying to do that.
I would add that as a preservation architect, that myself, is that stucco does trap water in against the brick. And from the water migrating up the wall, it's keeping that brick constantly wet, so the mortar could be in deteriorated condition. So if you were to take the stucco off, yes, indeed, you may find that the mortar joints are heavily deteriorated.
Something we did discuss as well is, during the construction process, he and I were talking about some of the challenges of just trying to bid it, just trying to get it constructed. And, you guys all of you, I'm sure, are aware of those challenges, and there's always going to be a lot of surprises, things you didn't see. But one of those things we tried to anticipate, too, is looking at the way that the floor is currently supported. And though I haven't been under it yet, if it were a little more crawl space, I probably would have been in there already. But I have poked around and looked through empty floorboards and whatnot, trying to see the foundation a little bit better. But it does appear that it is somewhat supported almost by piers on the inside, even on the exterior walls, so the exterior foundation walls are more infill than a continuous load, or than a distributed load across them.
So you think it had perimeter piers, and then it was infilled in between?
To some degree, yes. I don't think that it's relying on a. Again, I can't verify that yet, but that's part of what we want to try to look at further when we get into this a little further.
I would not be surprised by that. I've had
I wouldn't either.
some, experience with these Craftsman era homes. I lived in one right around the block.
Yeah.
The gables had stucco. The foundation did not. But the bricks did not have Portland in the mortar. The mortar is very soft. So
So lime-based mortar.
when you remove this, I think you're right. You're going to see that the mortar joints in the brick are going to be very soft compared to the stucco itself. And agree with Jim's point that that stucco veneer has probably not done any favors to those brick over the years. I'd like to just also personally add that the stucco is such a minimal design element of this house. I only see the limestone as an upgrade. I certainly hear the point from the preservation perspective, but again, I mean, the percentage of stucco that's visible on the front of this house, once the landscape package goes in, it's going to be limited to the porch, I believe.
We felt the same way.
But on the other hand, what I'd like to say is, your house, your new house is going to look so much more attractive if you go with stone rather than stucco. But that's a personal.
It's more of an aesthetic concern.
But you look at. I mean, I've been driving by that house now for 30 years, and I love that house. But I'm always thinking, I wish that white wasn't framing the bottom of it. That's just personal, but.
I actually agree. Yeah, I'm rooting for the stone.
I think, though, that our job is to consider the historic character of the house, and a limestone veneer would not have been used in that time period, most likely, as a veneer.
Well, as
there might have been real stone used, but if it was stucco, then the intent of our guidelines is that we go back with material matching what was there.
But I thought we are not 100% sure that when the house was built in 1912 that it was stucco. I mean, Jim mentioned that sometime later somebody came by and was adding stucco to everything, so we don't know for sure in 1912 that they used stucco.
That's true, but we're pretty sure it wasn't limestone veneer. And I think if we compare our guidelines to the questions that we're asking, that the guidelines will come down in favor of material that was there, that we, as best we know at this point. Now in the addition, you want to use something that is different from what was there historically, because the addition should not, as you say, mimic or fool people into thinking that it was what it was. And so I think that we need to go with what we know was, as best as what we know was there.
Well, I know that, it's not uncommon for houses of that era and earlier and later, for that matter, to have a solid stone foundation that remains exposed, a solid limestone.
But we know this one does not.
We know it does not. So
that's
so kind of bringing in that sort of cut limestone as a substitute for what's there now seemed like a reasonable sort of substitution, if you will, just because it does, it is appropriate to the time. If even though it's not, obviously it wouldn't be veneer, it would have been a solid, single wide or double wide stone wall as their foundation wall.
I don't think we've ever as a group faced a situation like this, that it sounds like it was likely piers, then it was infield, and they used the stucco to cover the fact that the piers and the infield didn't match, so they did it to cosmetically make it look solid, but you now want to do stone, so it's like, which one do you pick? It's Sophie's choice here.
I think that's well phrased. I wish I would have thought that through as cleanly as that. I think that, but ultimately, that's the question we've been asking ourselves, and then going with the material that we think that is kind of most consistent with the period and with the style, as well as the material that we think will add the most in the neighborhood, seemed like the right choice to us.
As well. Yeah.
Any further discussion from the board? If not, the chair would welcome a motion.
Well, I make a motion that we approve it as submitted with the cut stone veneer.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those then in favor of going with the motion to allow stone, please say aye.
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 Those opposed?
No.
No. It passes, though. And so I would take this a bit further, that then if you want to do the stone on the additions to make it match, that's another question then. really, follow-up question. Or do we ask them to make it something different?
Because the base of the columns will have the stone, I believe it would be awkward for the new additions not to match.
The idea is, and you'll see that the new additions have a higher stone than the old house. So the idea is to use the stone as the unifying element, but use then the height and then the different upper finish to differentiate them. Putting words in Christopher's mouth.
No.
The chair would welcome a motion then on regards to the stone on the addition as well. The parts we've already discussed, the portico share, the rear addition.
I'd move to allow the cut stone veneer on the additions.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Do we have any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye for the motion to allow the stone on the additions. Say aye.
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 Those opposed?
No.
Okay. That is now resolved. The windows, you're going to restore the original windows. You're not replacing them. That's one of our big, if you've watched us on TV, you know all too well. What are you doing to the windows?
Something Steve and I had talked about. We really like the windows that are there currently, and I think it's just a few exceptions. They're in pretty decent shape. They really are. I know Steve is sort of located. I know at least one tradesman who feels confident that they can restore it as is. I assume
We're very interested in the board's suggestions on additional craftsmen who would be interested in bidding on this job.
These are single pane existing original windows?
Yes.
Are you going back with insulated glass in them, or are you putting storm windows on?
We had talked about doing storm windows of some sort, but yet, like I said, we're sort of still kind of in the middle of the design process, and we haven't narrowed down on exactly what that would be yet.
Normally, we ask for submittals to not only the drawings, but to include samples of materials or cut sheets of things like that. So since we don't have the storm windows, I think we ought to table that. If you want to get them, just come back to us, and we'll go through the same thing. You've got time out there that you can come back.
We're very comfortable with that
Yeah.
suggestion.
So you'll repair the windows only as needed. You'll replace the rail or the stile or replace the muntin, but you intend to keep the sash as much as possible.
Yes, very much so.
And to put window screens. Are these going to be only on the bottom half, the lower sash, or the whole window?
Like I said, that's still sort of up to discussion, I think.
Actually, I think they're not new. We have the original screen frames that we'd like to refurbish.
Are they wood?
And use. They're wooden. Yeah.
They're wooden.
Yeah, so they need a fair amount of work. I'm actually hoping to do it myself. That'll be my hobby for the next year. But, and yes, exactly. Don't approve that or deny that yet. But we'd like to refurbish those and put them on most of the windows. They are upstairs as well as down, but yes, just on the lower part of the window.
So they're underneath the upper sash?
Yes,
You have the little hooks at the top of your window
exactly.
where they can hang in.
And if you don't have enough, you'll add more of them like it? If you were to put something new,
Yeah,
Our attention is-
them so that,
Our current thinking, and I think we'll just bring this all back to you guys, but is, we'd probably, rather than restore the screens for all the windows, restore 2 to 3 per room, and I feel confident we've got, that number. Yeah.
to me, I mean, as a commission, if restoring the original windows doesn't take a motion or a vote, and the screens and the storm windows would, so I think we can table that whole item since you're restoring them.
Do you have storm windows, or you have to? They're just screens. There are no storm windows.
Originally had screens. I don't see in their request anything about the storms, just the original windows and the screens.
Yeah, I think that's still, we haven't had mind share to think about it yet.
I think if you were coming to us and saying you wanted to replace the windows, then we would have to have a vote. But I think the fact that you're restoring the existing ones and you're going to come back with storm windows and screens at some point, then, David, is that a fair interpretation?
Yes, sir.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
We feel like the windows that are there now add a tremendous amount of character to the house.
Yeah.
We're trying to preserve that as much as possible.
They're pretty unique in their design on the upper sash, so I would hate to get rid of those. We would probably ask you to copy them anyway. Let's go on to then complete the remaining cedar brackets. Describe that issue.
There are, if you notice on the front elevation, there is some brackets on the front porch coming off the columns. They're coming in two directions, 90 degrees from each other on the corner. And we're looking to, it appears, looking at what's there now, that there was a bracket there at one point in time going on the other column on the other side. We're looking to replace that, recreate kind of what's there now. I've kind of created a drawing that kind of shows what the dimensions of what those brackets look like now. Additionally, on the screen porch and the little porch in the back of the house, we're looking to kind of add that element to both the porte cochere and also the screen porch, just to kind of maintain some consistency around the building.
There's really sort of two brackets, really. The second floor has a simplified
Yes.
kicker,
Right.
whereas the front porch has a sort of undulating
A more scalloped, a little scalloped edge.
bracket. So you're going to, where one is missing, you're going to match the closest one to it to make sure
Exactly.
the integrity of the design is.
We're trying to match what's there now in places where it's missing. Did you say one? The ones that are stray are replaced.
Jim, you're talking about,
I'm not sure which one.
yes.
Yeah.
So you're basically replacing what's missing that was there with one similar to what it's next to.
Exactly, and we're also trying to repeat the pattern that you see on the front porch at the porte cochere. So we're trying to,
It's at the same level, so that makes sense.
exactly, it's at the same level.
Oh, I see.
What questions does the commission have of this particular item? If not, the chair would welcome a motion on this.
So moved to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We now have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? As we mentioned, we're not going to review the exterior painting because we don't review it. I'm just hoping you don't do bubblegum pink. That would be nice.
You don't have to worry about that.
Refinish the front porch and add stairs leading to the driveway. If you could describe that in more detail. We've hit a lot of it, but just
Yeah, there's right now the current stairs that are there are just in a little bit disrepair, and we see this as an opportunity to kind of fix that a little bit. There's different rising heights and whatnot, and so.
I hope you'll fix it a lot because it's the remainder of something that had cheek walls to either side. So that's a big, huge improvement. Thank
Right.
you. Thank y'all for doing that.
We're looking to do that, and then because of the porte cochere, we're actually looking to add stairs to the other side of the porch so that we can come onto the porch from the garage.
Yes.
And then you're adding the little 16-inch wall between the front piers to the left of the front stairs, and then on the right side, you're
That's
adding
correct.
a little 16-inch wall there, but you're not adding it because you're putting the stairs down.
Bringing the
to porch
stairs up
there.
there. Exactly.
And you're resurfacing the concrete slab.
Yeah, that's something we need to kind of revisit. It needs some kind of treatment of some sort, whether we need to replace it or resurface it. We need to look at what.
But it will look to the visitor as a concrete slab. It won't be, you'll cover it with quarry tile or indoor-outdoor carpet or anything.
No.
Ask. My mom did that in the 60s, by the way.
God bless you.
Just, I guess, this is still an outstanding design question, probably, a phase two kind of thing. If we wanted to cover it in, say, wood, would that be something the board would want to review?
It would, in our mind, it would be a change in material. Resurfacing it with concrete to look like concrete is fine, but if you were to change it to wood or quarry tile or, God forbid, carpet, you would have to come before us.
Okay.
I think my grandmother has carpet on her back porch too, as we speak.
Any further questions of the commission of the front porch? And mind you that we're replacing the front sidewalk and the cheek walls of the steps, and the steps have a little bit of a flare now, whereas they probably were square. I don't know what the steps look like exactly, but it looks like they were square. So it's just a little difference there in the cheek
Just a little
walls.
flourish there to greet you as you come in. Great place to put your pumpkin.
Any further questions? If so, the chair would welcome a motion.
Move to approve the request.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Replace the I'm sorry, I joined the two of them together. Replace the concrete walkway leading to the front porch. So that's already been taken care of with that motion. The landscaping we are not addressing. The fence around the rear of the property that is 3 feet tall. You've shown us the drawings. I would like for Joe to get that so when they do their reviews during construction that he knows what he's reviewing. So we appreciate that. What's not on here is the fact that on the front elevation, somebody's removed the gutters and downspouts and then got raw boards up there. I'm assuming you're going to paint the fascia board and put gutters and downspouts. Could you describe what type of gutter and downspouts you plan to do?
Actually, I think we're looking to do a French drain around the perimeter of it and not add gutters.
Not have anything.
Right.
It's pretty astounding since we've owned the house for 6 months now through some pretty big rainstorms. The way the gables are set up, water never gets into the house. And so we think that we don't think that there was a gutter system original to the house because of the wide gables. And so we plan to use the French drain to basically deal with drainage issues.
Well, I suspect that water that was not carried away by gutters and downspouts was what helped also to deteriorate the stucco and the bricks behind it.
That's why we want to put in the French drain.
Okay, and then since you're not putting that in there, then I don't think there's a motion necessary for further discussion. Is there anything else we haven't talked about?
Did we need to approve the fence, or did we do that already?
Not that I can think of.
Did we approve the fence?
No, we haven't yet.
Okay. Let's discuss then the fence on the rear. You've seen then the drawings that on her phone. Is there any further discussion?
It's just say rear of the property. This backs up to the grocery store. Isn't there already a chain link fence in the back of your property?
Yes, that's true. There is a chain link fence between us and Juniors. What is our plan for that?
Would it be taller in the back area to mask that?
That's part of the many discussions we have with her father as well about what to do and with each other. And I think part of what we, if we add a fence, now you've got a space between an old fence and a new fence, and what happened? You know, that just gets terrible. That grows up and gets nasty.
Yeah, ultimately, our idea, and this doesn't fit exactly with the current design of the house that you saw exactly, but we're trying to get as much green space as possible, so we're trying to use foliage to be the big walk from the eyesore of Juniors, and without the convenience factor. And we would like to add some kind of masonry fountain back there, maybe something from horse trough or something like that, to also mask the noise from their refrigerators.
Is this your dad's work?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good, because we love the idea of foliage rather than fences. So.
That would mask that chain link much better.
I think part of having the little feature wall / fountain perhaps back there is to just have a focal point, a place to draw your eye to, and then we can sort of mask the rest with
Thank you.
with some plantings.
Any further questions or comments from the commission? The only thing I can suggest is that in our guidelines, it says we don't allow chain link fences. And I just wonder, does the commission have any feelings regarding the metal infill, the grating between the rails and stiles and posts? It's not chain link, but yet it's metal panels.
And it's powder coated, right?
This is the first time we've had this. That's why I'm asking. We've never had this approach at all.
Yeah, I mean, the idea, and this was, again, the landscape architect's idea was, I mean, we want to keep it open and, kind of, it's not a large backyard, so keep it as open an area as possible. At the same time, we want to, have a dog and be able to contain it.
I should say, he did, he's not used to doing domestic work, but his inspiration came particularly from the Gamble House in Pasadena, that this was sort of a type of fence that blends in with the natural surroundings. And so that was also the approach, to borrow scenery from around us, and still to draw in some of the wood from the house out into the landscape, but to hide the boundaries is the phrase that he's repeatedly used.
Will it be concealed by landscaping that will cover it virtually?
Some parts of it, sure, but maybe not all of it.
I only bring it up because it's the first time we've had this. I'm not sure what I think about it, but I wanted the commission to be able to be aware that we don't allow chain, and the public who's watching, that we don't allow chain link fence unless like a tree were to fall on it and they needed to repair it or something like that. We did have that situation once across from Central Middle School.
My feeling is, since it's set in wood with wooden posts and wooden supports, that it's more of a wooden fence than the metal inserts.
Ultimately, the metal part does not attract the eye at all. It is something that's
It's meant to sort of recede from the eye
Exactly.
as
I
opposed to.
understand. Yeah, just
And the wooden,
want to make sure they're, yeah, you know.
the wooden element, did you say that was cedar or pressure treated? Cedar?
For us, it's all about precedent.
Yeah.
I understand.
The cedar should, match to
That's
some degree the
intent,
house.
just to kind
That's
of,
yeah.
there's beautiful cedar that's been put, new cedar that's been put in, and we want to kind of bring those two together.
I'm
Will the
assuming.
cedar be stained, opaque, or translucent stain? Will it just weather and it'll be
It would
turned
still look
gray?
like wood. It may still have a like a semi-transparent stain on it, but it will still be a cedar. It's going to.
I'm just saying, if it were natural cedar, no finish, it would turn gray.
Right. Yeah, it will be. It will have a finish on it.
Any further discussion or questions regarding this particular feature? If not, the chair would welcome a motion regarding the 3-foot-high fence in the back and two sides, the behind the main front of the house.
Motion to approve.
Have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes. Anything else you can think of that we haven't discussed? I mean, for me, like that circular sidewalk we didn't discuss, is it just natural concrete? Is it pebble concrete? Is
Honestly,
it?
we're still not sure. I assume it'll be some sort of concrete. In fact, what that design even is still may that design behind the fence of what goes back there.
I think if you're not matching what's out there in the front there at the driveway, if you change it to something else, you'll have to get approval.
Okay, we'll keep that in mind. We're honestly still waiting for my dad, who's working pro bono for us. So emotional strings attached to that. But
I should say.
we would be happy to.
We're happy to come back to the board with.
Yeah, bring it back, I think, just so we know. We wouldn't want to find out that it's, something
Yep,
very unusual.
very comfortable with that.
Not that I would expect you to do it, but. Anything else from the commission?
Just want to thank you all for what you're doing,
Yes.
finalizing that home. Thank you.
So
I
glad
think you're
to
doing a
have
great job. Thank you
somebody
very much.
who loves that home. It's wonderful.
We thank you for what you do. I think it's important.
Yep. That concludes your all's topic. Is there anything else, Joe?
That should be it.
That's it. Okay. Then the chair would welcome a motion to dismiss.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We are dismissed.